Many Flames fans think now is the best time to trade away Andrew Mangiapane, and guess what? You are in luck because his name has been swirling around the NHL trade rumor mill recently. So in this video, we will explore an article that has revealed 3 potential trade suitors for the Flames winger, and we will decide if this is a realistic possibility or not. We will get into all that and more in this video, but first, I want to welcome you to Flames Digest. I am Mark Griffith. If you're new around here and you love the Flames, make sure you subscribe because only right around 26% of the people watching are subscribed. So if you want to stay up to date on all the latest news, updates, reports, and rumors revolving around your Calgary Flames, then make sure you join the fastest growing community of Flames fans on the internet. We would love to welcome you to the Flames Digest family. We have such a lovely community here. Why not come and join it? Now let's just hop right in here and talk about how Mang is on the trade block. Now, I don't think it'll come as a surprise that his name has come up a little more recently in some trade talks, after the IIHF tournament. He did pretty well for Team Canada. I know they didn't medal, and he really only scored 1 goal, but he had a good showing, and maybe he wants to carry that momentum going into the season. Well, maybe that momentum will give him a little bit more trade value, and I know a lot of Flames fans are kind of a little bit done with Mang, so maybe now is a great time to trade him. So let's get into this article here. It comes from NHL Trade Rumors. It is written by Michael DeRosa. All credit to him for these 3 potential landing spots for Flames Andrew Mangiapane. I can't believe I keep calling him Andrew for once. Usually I say Andrew if you're new to the channel here. Andrew, if it slips, it slips. But before we get into these 3 potential landing spots for Mang, let's just take a look at his stats this past NHL season. We know they weren't great, but he still did put up 40 points, and we know he is capable of producing. Now, obviously, he's not the biggest guy, and he's not necessarily the youngest either. He's kind of in those prime years, so you expect him to be really, really good. He did end up having a positive plus-minus this past season on the Flames, which is pretty impressive considering how many losses started to pile up towards the end of the season. But he genuinely still has a lot of value. I think he still has so much potential to be the scorer he was a couple seasons ago, and we will maybe take a look at some of his past stats later in this video. But either way, he still has good trade value, and I think the Flames could get something decent out of him. It won't be a first-round pick, and it won't be a team's best prospect or their best young player, but the Flames could kind of do some sort of package with another player on the Flames or something to make a trade work. So without further ado, let's just get into the first one here and talk about the Chicago Blackhawks. You saw it from the thumbnail. They're in here, and genuinely to me, this one doesn't make all that much sense unless there's more to it than just Mang, but let's see what the article says. So, the Chicago Blackhawks are a team to watch when it comes to Mangiapane. They need to add more impactful forwards to their roster to help Connor Bedard, so Mangiapane could make sense for them. With that, if he had a strong year in Chicago, he could net the rebuilding Blackhawks a nice return at the deadline. So, while this does make sense, it definitely does, that totally adds up, I'd rather Mangiapane net the Flames something at the trade deadline because look, the Chicago Blackhawks are very much so in a rebuild right now, and they have some really good prospects that they are going to want to keep around. And it's not like Mangiapane is the type of scorer that I'm sure Connor Bedard wants to play with. You think Connor Bedard is, when he's sleeping in bed at night and he can't, stay asleep or whatever, he's thinking, oh man, I could produce so much more if I had Mangiapane on my line. Look, I love Mang. He's a great guy, but I don't think that totally makes sense. And I don't know. I don't think Chicago would offer up what the Flames would want in one of those trades. They already have some smaller, somewhat scoring forwards, Tyler Johnson. It's interesting. I don't see Chicago being the biggest reality here. So let's take a jump at maybe another team in the New York Islanders. Now, this one's a little bit more spicy, I gotta say, but the third one in this video I think is the most realistic out of them all. But the New York Islanders, they were recently rumored to be maybe interested in Kuzmenko, or Kuzmenko would be a good fit there. Now maybe Mangiapane. So, the New York Islanders are going to surely look to add to their forward group this summer. They need more scoring, and Mangiapane has the potential to give them that. He has a 35-goal season on his resume, and that could be enough for the Islanders to take a shot on him. Now, the Islanders are in an interesting place because they are in a division that has some really, really good teams. Not that they've been making the Stanley Cup final since, 2019 or so? But either way, they are in an interesting spot where their prospect pool isn't that good. Their future isn't that bright, so they need to keep their window of contention open now. So maybe they'd be willing to pick up a Mangiapane. The reason why I don't see it making full sense is because just like kind of Tyler Johnson in Chicago, the Islanders already have Andrew Mangiapane in their roster, and it is Jean-Gabriel Pageau. They're almost the same kind of player. Guys that can produce, they're a little bit smaller for sure, but can play a defensive game and get good plus minus, and then of course can chip in whenever. Now Pageau, I'd say, is a much better playoff performer. We've seen that in the past, but I don't know if that totally makes sense. But the one thing I do want to look at here is that they said he does have a 35 goal season, and I think a lot of us do forget that. He had 35 goals just 2 seasons ago. I know a lot of Flames stats were inflated that season because of how good the Flames were and how much they scored. I mean, think of Johnny Gaudreau, Matthew Tkachuk, Elias Lindholm's numbers that year. But 35 goals, he is capable of doing that. And the one thing I also wanted to show here, other than, he's pretty much a point every other game in his career, is the far column on the right there. Look at his plus minus in his NHL career. He has almost always had a positive plus minus other than the 10 games he originally came up for in the 2017-18 NHL season. He has had a positive plus minus in all of the past 6 seasons, which I think is impressive because the Flames, while they were competitive in a lot of those years, they also haven't been great in some of those years as well. And it just really shows that he does have some value of when he is on the ice, the Flames are more likely to score than their opponent, at least on 5-on-5, we can say. Now, one thing I want to look at here too is what the Islanders can offer. Because let's be honest, Mangiapane's not going to fetch a first-round pick. The Islanders, I don't think, will want to give away a first-round pick, at least not for Mange. So I already also said their prospect pool is thin. Some people think it is the worst in the NHL. I can't remember his name, but I know they traded away that big defenseman not too long ago. I think it was this past season. He was kind of their best prospect, and now it is thin. But there's one guy who, as a Flames fan, I'd be interested in. I don't know if the Isles would give him up, but it is Kalle Odelius, which has to be one of the coolest names in the history of the planet Earth, whether you call him Kalle or Kalle. I know we say like Kalle Yarncroke, but I think it's pronounced Kalle. But either way, he is a left-handed D-man, Swedish, and he is sick. So Odelius is a steadying, calculating two-way defenseman who plays a head-on-a-swivel game built upon snuffing plays out defensively and advancing play back the other direction. He's not a dynamic on-puck carrier or creator in the O-zone, but he walks the line really well, and he's prolific at moving the puck from A to B, either with precision first passes or comfortable north-south carrying. He is unreal. This comes from The Athletic, this little prospect analysis here, but he's really good. That's who I would go for in a trade with the Isles. I'm just not 100% sure that the Isles would want to give that up. Maybe in a package that would include both Kuzmenko and Mange. Don't know if that's in the best interest of either team. I'm just trying here to make it work. But either way, I don't see a trade with the Isles being the most realistic unless it's genuinely just, look, here's a third rounder or here's a second rounder. I want Mange to go for as much as possible, but we will have to see. Now let's get into what I think from this article is maybe the most realistic destination, and that is the Washington Capitals. The Capitals are also in an interesting position, just like the Islanders, where they're in that Metro division. They also snuck into the playoffs this year, didn't win a game, but they're in an interesting spot where their prospect pool isn't necessarily awful, kind of like the Islanders one is, but they're not exactly fantastic either, and they do have the potential of keeping a winning culture and keeping their window of at least playoff contention open, and Mange could fit there. So let's see what this article says. The Washington Capitals will look to add on the wing this offseason. Mangiapane would be a strong addition to their top 6 and would also be an option for their power play. After how poorly the Capitals scored this season, bringing in a player like Mangiapane would make sense for them. And that is very true. I don't know if he'd fit quite into their top 6 right away, but who knows? He could gel with anyone. He could be Ovechkin's replacement when he decides to retire. But no, I think Mangiapane, I don't know why, but I can actually picture him in a Capitals uniform. I don't know why, he seems just destined to wear that. But I think a trade like this could work because Washington does have prospects. I can't remember his name. What is his name? Washington has some really, really A1 prospects that they won't give up, but there's one guy. Oh my goodness. He's on the Kelowna Rockets. Crystal? Is it Crystal? Andrew Crystal or something like that? Teammate of TJ Ginla. He could be someone the Flames could look into acquiring. A very young winger for, I guess, a guaranteed former scorer, we can say. But either way, it could happen. But prospects or picks aside, there could be a 1-for-1. And I'm looking at the defensive pairings of the Washington Capitals. They're pretty good. They played a good defensive game this season. They just had trouble scoring. And if we did a 1-for-1, I know it's not ideal, but a Rasmus Sandin could actually fit quite well into the Flames lineup. I just think in no way is he going to be, the cornerstone defenseman for the Flames, of course, but he's an NHL caliber defenseman and could very well slot into that D core and keep them somewhat competitive if that is what the goal is to do next season, like what the GM and the management are saying that they want to make the playoffs next season. But either way, that's just some sort of speculation, mock trade, I guess. I'm sure we will have better ones as we actually do get into the trade season. But either way, I think Washington could be in on Andrew Mangiapane. Now let's wrap up this video with the comment of the day, everyone's favorite part of the day. And this one, a little bit more of, I guess, a bolder take from this user here, ms_00. Honestly, Flames will surprise the whole hockey world next season and have a real good season. If they do bad next season, first round belongs to Montreal. Now let's break this down into the two sentences. The first one, pretty bold to say that the Flames will shock, the hockey world and have a real good season. I personally would love to see that happen. Is it the most realistic? Maybe not, but it's not the most bold thing either. We've seen it happen in the past. It would kind of suck if they just shock the world by making the playoffs and being in the mushy middle. If they shock the world by making a deep playoff run, all the better. The second thing too, I just want to clear up is if we do bad, our pick doesn't necessarily go to Montreal. It is between our first round pick and Florida's first round pick. Now, Florida last night obviously just made it to the Stanley Cup final. Unless something crazy happens this offseason and they just suck next year, then we should be able to give Montreal Florida's pick and keep our own no matter how high it is. So just wanted to clear that up there. Thank you so much for watching this video. Please subscribe if you like what you saw here today and have a wonderful rest of your day.